We do have a group training session today, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I'm going to cover some specifics around sort of the framework of Materio today. I think sometimes, when it comes to setting up a project in Materio, we've thought about this really differently, and it's a way that's really systematized and really works, but I think sometimes it's a little bit unique. And so I wanted to dive into that and just sort of cover very specifically what happens, where you're supposed to put things, and sort of the process around estimation, quotes, approvals, purchase orders, and all of that. So I think we're going to go through that framework. And then if there's any specific questions, we'll go over it. And then I also wanted to cover how certain things sync over to QuickBooks. I know a lot of folks have questions about QuickBooks, and you might even want to be able to share this training with your accountant. So I'm going to go through some of the billing mechanisms and how those sync over, what that looks like, and then we'll sort of go from there, depending on what questions people have. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen today. And we're going to take a look at this project. This is a full addition remodel project. You can see that I have sort of existing house here, and then this is all of an addition where this line is. So it's kind of a renovation in addition. This is about a 4,600 square foot house, I believe. So this is just an example of one of the sort of normal size projects that goes into Materio. Now we have customers doing small projects, but we also have customers doing really, really large projects and even commercial work. So there is, this is a framework that really works for any size project. What it's going to help you do, if you haven't figured this out already, you are joining a training, so you probably experienced some of this, is it's going to give you a framework. This is a framework to hand off to other team members, whether they're junior or not, remote or not. This is going to be a place for all of the project information to go. So in this training, I also want to make sure that you understand, again, where things are going. So on the right over here, this is where you put your floor plans. This is where you would put finished schedules, finished dimensions and plans, any kind of architectural notes, like you'd put the whole set in here. Now, this may be something that you don't want to show to your clients. So you can always come in and hide that. You can also rearrange it, turn things, on and off for your client. But this is just a place for you to get organized. And I actually might want to go ahead and put some of these in this stack. So you can create these stacks down here that are basically like folders or stacks of paper. And this is just going to give you a place to kind of consolidate. So when you're working with a really large set of plans, it's really nice to sort of be able to group them. And then it's also nice because as you start to build out mood boards or inspiration, you can group them as well. So instead of having to scroll in this regard, we'll probably go ahead and put, the demolition in here. And we're actually going to rename this pricing set, because that's what I've got here is a lot of pricing details as I'm trying to get this. So if you're the builder, you may be getting this set from an architect. If you're a designer, you may be doing a lot of these plans and drafting yourself. It's really flexible. Doesn't matter who's providing the plans. They can all do that in Materio. If it is coming from an architect or it is coming from an outside designer and you're a GC, just go ahead and invite them at the top here. So as they have new versions or changes, they can come in and reload them. So this is just a way for me to get organized, sort of put everything into certain stacks, and then build out, other components. You'll see that I also have things like the existing conditions of this home, which you can add in using a board. I've created some boards in here as well. And then I've even created boards using the products that we have, as well as some inspiration. So it's really flexible in what you can put over here. The key thing to note about the right side of your project and sort of these visuals at the bottom is that it is truly flexible, that you do have the ability to have version control. So as you add in let's go back to this main floor. As you add in different versions, you'll see that I can click on those. I can always restore older versions if I need to. So when you're uploading a new version, make sure you're replacing, you're not deleting, especially if you've got all these markers on here, you want to keep those in. So that is just sort of visual framework, replacing, keeping things up to date. Now over here on the left, we're going to have the scope of work. And we talk about this in a lot of our demos. If you're using Materio, you're using this part of the system, but what this is going to do is give you a framework for outlining every single thing that needs to go into a project. Now, this can be, for example, in this project, we've got more construction type materials and design materials because we're doing the whole thing. If you're just a design firm and you're doing only the design, you can obviously just do that, or construction, only construction, it's very flexible. This is completely free form in a way, like you can just go in and add items that you want to. Now, another new thing that we've recently launched, so if you're watching this training and you've been in Materio for a while, is the ability to change these plan markers. So I can come in and drag, I can select something from, the default here, the default palette down here, or I can get really custom. So it comes to your scope of work over here on the left. This is just a way for you to connect information to the floor plan and also a way for you to estimate. So most of you are probably putting formulas into spreadsheets. We actually are going to give you the ability to kind of take that away. And so you'll notice on this project management, I actually have the quantity of weeks. So you have weeks, days, hours, months, obviously other things like square feet, etc. But what this allows you to do is be flexible about the way that you present this to clients. So if you typically bill for project management hourly, you could do hours. In this case, I've decided to do a certain rate for a week, and then I would just put in what my rate is. If I have a breakdown of, item or labor, I could do that. If I want to charge tax or not, I'm probably not going to charge tax on that. And I actually don't need a labor on this. So my unit price for project management for a week is $1,000. And so now I have my 18 weeks of project management here. Now I can always come in and change this and adjust. And if I was in the middle of a project and we had already signed a contract and I was live with this project, I would be prompted to add a change order for adding any sort of work like that into the system. So we're going to keep track of those things as well. Now, the other thing you'll notice, like on this fireplace here, is that we do have a tag, and that we also, so you're able to come in and put actual codes here, tag codes. And so you can match floor plans if you've got that, if that's easier for you to communicate with your team like that. That is there. So when I hover over it, you'll see I've got F1 and all of the information about F1. And then you'll also see that I have two missing specs. So you may have not used the specification system in Materio yet, but this is here for you to define specifications that you want in each one. So I'm going to delete that one and add in a new one because I had a floor tile example on there on this fireplace, but this is where you'd want to come in and basically add in these templates for what kind of specifications you need on certain things. So you'll notice I have paint, floor tile, fencing, sofas, countertops, etc. So this is going to be a way for you to specify things. And when those specifications are missing, you're going to get that little alert. So that's, again, just going to keep your team on track, making sure they don't miss information. So as far as actually going through each of the types of markers on the floor plan, let's go through that. I know that a lot of you are using this already, but I want to go into some of the specifics of how we can connect information in a way. So what I'm going to do is actually get rid of this one and just update the markers here. And then I want to go in. This is a pretty large project here, so we're going to find our information. Another thing to know about the framework of Materio is that you've got your category level and then you've got your location level. And a lot of times people get confused about why you need that. The reason that's important is because in your selections workspace, as you're sort of figuring out what you need for this project, as the design team is figuring out what's needed, this is going to be organized by location. And so this is really important because if you're trying to look at the half bath upstairs all in one view, then you're going to want to have that location set and those items within those locations. Because you'll notice that the items, within this location are electrical, plumbing, tile. So they're all going to be different trade categories, but they are all tied to that location. So that's why it's important to go ahead and make sure that over here in the left, you have those locations spelled out and that you have those items inside those locations so that you can properly find them, easily share them with your client if you're trying to create, send over a proposal, and also so you can create a mood board or a product board using those locations as well. So it's important to understand that. Now, if I wanted to add a location or remove a location under electrical, I would just click that and then I would check on the location. You'll see that I have almost every location right now under electrical. And again, if I need to uncheck it, I would do that. And it's going to let you know if you've got items under there. It's just going to remove it from that location and throw it into sort of a general location. Now, the other thing to note about location-based work is that sometimes you may have something like electrical labor. And electrical labor is something that's going to be throughout the house. So in this case, what you're going to do is simply carry it outside of any location, but under the electrical category. So you'll notice that this electrical labor is simply under electrical, but it's not showing up in a location. Whereas these probably all need to be in a location. So that is the way that that would work. So that is sort of generally how the framework goes. It's category underneath that location. If you wanted to switch to category, or excuse me, location view, you can do that. And this allows you to come in and add items underneath each room. Now, the other thing to note when you're adding in items here, so let's say we're adding a sink here. This little green selection paint roller here is going to enable it as a selection, which means it's going to show up in your selections workspace. It means that your client needs to approve that at some point or sign off on it. And it's a product that you're going to be procuring. In this case, I'm going to hit save. Now, if I wanted to add in, let's say, labor, I would want to uncheck this and hit save. And you'll notice that this doesn't have the question mark by it, which means it's not going to show up over here in the selections workspace. So as you build out things in your scope of work, that is going to connect directly to what products need to be sourced and where this goes. Now, let's dive into how you might collect payment at the beginning of a job. So depending on how you work, there are going to be a few ways you can do this. Oftentimes, at the beginning of a project, you might be collecting a deposit on the scope of work. And in Materio, we're keeping track at an item level of what you are billing and what needs to be billed out. So in this case, I'm going to collect a 25% deposit on the work that is going to be done. And so I could come in and I could select every single category in this project. It's going to make for a really long invoice for my client. So that's one thing you may not want to do. But in this case, I'm going to do it because I want to collect a 25% deposit and I want to apply it to technically every item in this project. So I'm going to add those items, I'm going to hit next, and then I'm going to drag it down to 25%. So this is going to be very clear to your client that I am paying, they're paying 25% of the, project estimated total. And I'm going to send this over to my client. Now, you don't actually have to have your client invited to the project yet to send them an invoice. So if you're not ready to invite them into the system, but you want to go ahead and get that payment, you could just add them in as a contact and send it over. And this is going to be our initial deposit. And it's going to be 25%. So I'm just going to title that invoice. You can put obviously when the payments are due. And then if you scroll to the bottom of this invoice, you'll also notice that if you are using our Stripe integration, you can get paid online. For a payment this large, since it's $385,000, I'm definitely going to turn on wire transfer and turn off credit card, and probably turn off ACH transfer. I think wire transfer is a great method for collecting really large amounts securely. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and send that over to my client. Now, the deposit function in Materio is earmarking those funds for those items. Of course, it can always change, but it is allocating those funds sort of to that deposit. And at the end of the project, you would then create invoices to close out any final bills. So that has been sent. Now, let's just say that I received a check for this payment. I could click on it, open it up, say new payment received, say that it was a check, or if they wired it to me separately without the Materio integration, I could do that. And then I would send a payment confirmation over. This is just letting your client know, hey, we've received that check, we've deposited it, here it is as documentation, and now that is paid. So you can see that I now have $385,000 of deposits held, which means that I can get started on this project and start working. You'll also notice that if I go to any of the items that were selections, so I did have some products in here that was approved and I invoiced or collected deposit on those, you'll see that they now say partially paid at 25%. So the cool thing is that we're going to let you know when things are paid, where they're paid, where they're at in the payment schedule, and that's all going to be right here. Now, if we go back to our finances, there may be a time in which you want to collect a retainer. So this is kind of the second alternative for collecting money up front. Let's say I want to collect a retainer to get started on my project. I might be doing this retainer for my design services. I may be doing this for FF&E. Either way, a retainer is going to be a revenue deferred billing document, which really only impacts your QuickBooks if you're integrated with QuickBooks. But this is going to be a way to collect money on the project, and then you're going to be able to add that sort of as a credit to your account that you can apply elsewhere. So in this case, I'm going to add my design retainer. And this is, again, maybe for my services as I'm getting started on the project. I'm going to add that in. Again, choose which payment options I want. You can, of course, turn all of them off if you don't want your client to pay you online. And then I'm going to send these over. And if I send this over, you'll see, let's actually close out of this. You'll see that I have an outstanding balance due. So as you're sending these billing documents, you're going to get a really good picture of where things are at right here. And you're also going to get a good picture of where things are at over here. So if you have items that are paid over here, they will show up here. Now you'll notice that some of these have this deposit on them. So technically, we have not reported that revenue and therefore have not had invoices paid. It's just listed as a deposit. All right, so back to the retainer. If we get our retainer, we apply payment again. Let's just say that they wrote us a check. Again, if you're using Stripe, this is going to be automatic. It's just going to go right through. We'll say they paid us in a wire transfer, and we don't actually want to send a payment confirmation on this one, so we're doing it. Now we have $25,000 available in retainer to use against our project. So I could come in and let's just actually go ahead and track a few time entries here. So this is October Drive. And let's say we were doing conceptual design and we did 8 hours of that. You can add in notes here, save the time entry. Now, you can always enter more time. You can also use our start and stop timer if you need to as you're working in Materio, and then you can always review your time here. But I just wanted to add in some time and show you that when it's time to collect payment, let's say we're invoicing for our hours, maybe at the end of the month, I can just come right here and add the hours that I have logged or my team has logged to this project. And so this is really handy for quickly pulling in your time. You can also come in and customize these notes, customize the billable rate. So let's say for conceptual design, you actually wanted to charge this client less or more. You can come in and do that right here before you add it to the invoice. And then I can go ahead and send this over again to my client. So I'm going to send this over and I'm going to turn off my design fee there and shoot that over. So now I've easily billed for my hours. The other thing I wanted to talk about while we're talking about time is you can actually come in and create billable rates for different activities. And you can also manage those activities. So there are going to be company level activities. You may want to track time for your team doing social media, doing certain meetings, things that are probably considered more overhead. And then there are project activities. These are going to be project activities that you really want to get a handle on. So things you really want to track the numbers on. How much time are we spending on space planning? How much time are we spending on procurement? And this is going to help you gauge, are you being successful and are you charging the right amount? So even if you're not billing your team or billing your clients hourly, you want to be tracking what your team is working on because you're most likely paying them. And also, you just want to get a handle on, well, what should we do for the next project? So I always encourage everyone to track their time, have their team track their time, especially so that they can know their numbers and understand where it's at. So this is where you could delete activities, add activities in, and then I can also always come in and edit these timesheets, add new ones, assign them to certain things, put them on different projects, change the dates, etc. And so this is all done by the admin, and this is going to give me the ability to know the cost rate of my employees. So how much does it cost me to pay them per hour, and how much am I billing at my client, so that I can really get a good look at my profit. So I'm going to head back over to our project, and I want to show you what it looks like to sync these billing documents over to QuickBooks. So in this case, I have we're going to mark this as pay. All right, so I have a few different types of documents here. I'm also going to go ahead and do an invoice so we can sync that over as well. So in this case, if I am collecting money on things that I've already collected a deposit on, and let's say I'm going to collect 50%, and I'm actually invoicing this time. uh, I'm going to send this over. And then if I mark this paid, it's actually, you can see here that some of the deposit was paid on these items. So it's going to take the deposit funds that were earmarked for those items, apply that as a payment, and then I'm going to request the balance sort of as a final invoice in this. I can write a specific note if I want to and send that over. Now let's just say that this has been paid for. I'm going to save the payment. You'll see that again, all of this is keeping up to date here. It's deducting from those deposits. It's making it officially estimate or invoiced over here on the left. So I'm getting a good look at my financials. Now, if you're connected to QuickBooks Online, you will have this little up to date checkbox as well as a link to open this up into QuickBooks. So we're going to open up the retainer first and take a look at what that comes through as. So you'll notice that it comes through to the customer email, information, status is already paid, and then it's going to come over as a retainer right here. And then it's all going to be up to date around here. Now, if I want to look specifically at this payment, we can open that up as well, and you'll see that it is linked to a certain document here, and then there are some credit memos that are also attached to it. So if you're an accountant and you're wanting to understand how the retainers sync over, this is it. If you have other specific questions about how QuickBooks works, of course, we're happy to do a specific training with you on that. I just wanted to show how some of these billing documents are syncing over. Now let's open up this invoice here and take a look at it. So you'll see that it's coming over as products and services, and my design fee is also coming over. Now you'll also notice that I have two payments made against this. One is going to be, I believe, from that original deposit that we had, which is coming through as a credit memo. And then the other one is going to be coming over from the retainer, I believe. All right, so that is sort of an insight into how these things are syncing over to QuickBooks. The other thing that is going to be syncing into QuickBooks are your expenses. So if you're adding in miscellaneous expenses, let's just do an example here. Let's say that we had paid for a delivery to be made. We're delivering a custom sofa. I could go ahead and call this delivery. I can select my payment method. So again, if you're connected to QuickBooks, you're going to be able to select from your payment method, which is going to help you automatically reconcile your banking feed there. Let's say I use my Amex for this expense, put in the expense date. If you have a vendor, you can go ahead and put it in if you want to. And then you can come in and add in where this came from. So let's say this was actually we'll say it's for our appliance delivery. So we had our appliance delivered. We had the panel ready fridge delivered. It's for the delivery of the item and it cost me $150. Now I could get very specific here if I wanted to spell out each item and what it cost me to deliver. Now, in this case, I could say, okay, this is actually for the fridge and the dishwasher, and it's for the delivery. And so again, I can just get really, really specific about how I'm itemizing these expenses so that I can get a good look at my project, and then I'll have good data for the next time I go to do another project. So you can get very specific here. You can break those down, and you may also have a receipt that is across projects. So you may want to upload the receipt documentation, but you may only want to, account for some of that cost going to this project. So that is also why that might be useful. So then I'm going to save that in. You'll notice it's syncing over to QuickBooks right now. It's split across a couple items, and there we go, it's synced. And now there's a link to open this expense up in QuickBooks. So again, it's going to open it up here. It's going to be, description, delivery of this item specifically to this client, on this certain project, came from my Amex, etc. So this is a great way to get those expenses over into QuickBooks. Now, if you needed to bill for that expense, let's say you're getting reimbursed for miscellaneous expenses, maybe you do that at the end of the month with your hourly billing, you could come in, collect an invoice, and again, just really easily pull those expenses and their backups onto an invoice and send that over to your client. All right, I feel like we've gotten into the weeds on some of the things here. Now, I did want to point out a few new things in the system. I'm going to go ahead and just add in, let's see, I'm going to add in a template here. If you didn't know this, you can create templates for your timelines and use those across projects. I'm going to pull in one that I've got here, a simple one, just to show you some of the updates that we've made on the timeline. Now, previously, if you've been using Materio for a while, some of the selections that would sync into Materio weren't as smart as they are now. They would sort of sink in and they wouldn't go away. But now, if you're marking things as ordered, if you're using our new orders flow, these are all going to come on and off the timeline very seamlessly. So check that out. Make sure that you're using the orders process. But the big thing I wanted to show is that now you can actually create tasks in your project that are not connected to plan tasks. So these are simply project tasks. So I could say, send drawings to client, add in accountant, whatever it might be that you need to do on this project, it doesn't have to be on the plan task anymore. And if you're not familiar with plan tasks are things that are going to happen every time you do a certain phase of work. And this is why it's great for a template, because I can reuse this across projects. So every time we have client onboarding, we've got a consultation, we're collecting measurements, we're sending the contract, and we're collecting the retainer. Those are 4 things that I'm going to do every time I'm onboarding a client. So we consider those plan tasks. And then these other tasks are going to be tasks that just need to be done throughout the project. So now you can see those here, and you can also see them if you're adding in if you're adding in task over here. So let's add a new task, save it to the project. When I go back to that project, it should show up over here. There you go, as a task. So now it's going to work both ways. It's going to be from your dashboard to this other task list, and from this other task list to your team's dashboard. So it's a little bit more connected, and you really have a way to manage those project tasks. So that is new here as well. So that's really all I wanted to cover on the timeline. Is something that we've introduced recently that I think is really, really helpful. The other thing I wanted to go over is adding notes to a project. So you can do this from your mobile app. We call these field notes. In the mobile app, we make it super easy to add multiple photos and notes. That's really handy for when you're in the field, on the site, at your project with your client, trying to take notes or document what's happening. Those are all going to come to your activity feed, but you can also do this from your desktop or from the browser app. And so let's say we had a long client meeting and I wanted to sit down and recap. I could put in all of these client meeting notes. Maybe we've got a client meeting 10/18, and we just kind of want to go through and list out all of these things that we went over. I can do that. I can also come in and then add in, multiple photos here. Again, we make it much easier to add multiple photos in the mobile app. So if you've got those pictures on your phone, which most of us do, go ahead and do that in the mobile app. And then I can save those, and you'll see that I now have a note here. Now this note can be used simply internally. This activity feed is internal only. Your clients are not going to see this. But I can, if I want to, prepare a report to send that over to my client. And I can choose to show progress notes or not. And so you can kind of customize this, but this is a great way to get updates out to your team, out to your client if you would like to. Now, if I don't have a client on this project yet, but if I did, they'd show up right here. And any of the team members that are on this or external collaborators are going to show up right here. And you can just choose who you want to share this with. Now, your time notes are going to populate here. And this is just a really easy way for you to see what everybody's been doing. Now, if you're the project manager and you've got all these field notes or timesheet notes here, you might want to customize these and curate them a little bit. But instead of you having to reach out to your entire team and ask them what they've been doing, it's all going to populate right here. So this can be really useful for creating a progress report to send to your client. Now, we recommend doing this on Fridays or at least once a week to just let your clients know, hey, this is what's been going on the project. Now, as things are approved and ordered, that's all going to show up here, which is also really helpful if sometimes the site might not feel like anything is happening, or you might be doing a lot of ordering or things on the back end. This is a great way to communicate that to your client as well. So that is the activity feed. Now, I feel like we've gone a little bit deeper. I don't see any other questions coming in. I think what we're going to do is keep this a little bit shorter today. I think we'll be covering some of our new financial changes in the near future, doing some specific trainings. We have another training scheduled tomorrow, so I hope to see some folks there as well. But I hope that this has been helpful. I'm sure there are a lot of other little things we could go over, but to just save everyone time and give you back a little bit more time in your day, we're going to stop now since there's no further questions. And if you need any other help, please feel free to reach out to us. You can live chat us from the app. You can go to your menu and hit help. You can also chat us from your dashboard. There's a little chat box down here. So this is a great way to communicate with us or search our help center if you are looking for information. And then also know that you can just email us at hello@materio.co, and we would be so happy to help you out. Um, just we're here for you. We're excited to be using the platform and to have you be experiencing this organized way of doing things. We hope everyone has a great day, and we'll all talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.